so why did you grade that?
Yeah.
I'm not done with it yet. I'm sorry.
Aiden, you want to check it again?
There's my online macros class. It's like
Good.
Yeah, I took macro in high school, like AP macro, and the teacher got sick, so we just had to like teach ourselves out of textbook. I think the only reason I passed is because I just like locked in on the graphs the last like couple weeks before the exam, and I was like, okay, if I can draw them, that's better than most people. It's better than most people. I ended up getting 4, so it's alright.
You want Skittles?
Hmm?
You want Skittles?
I'll take the yellow one. Thanks.
You're so quiet.
Wait, where is it? Like starting time?
Good evening, everyone. Don't mind me while I read this off. I'm looking at my phone. Unfortunately, did not have time to get this memorized. However, we're going to get started tonight. I'm glad everyone made it to the correct room. Apologize for the change. We just wanted to make sure that we had enough room for everyone. The original room we had just wouldn't have been big enough, unfortunately. So apologies for that. My name is Ali Etzler. I am I'm a junior here at Eau Claire. I'm a political science major. I stand before you today as the director of the Intergovernmental Affairs Commission for our Student Senate, which essentially just means we serve as the liaison between the student body and various levels of government, typically state and local. Hence why we are hosting this event. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. You all should have been given a note card when you came in. If you were not given a note card, Michael, Gavin, could you raise your hands in the back? We all see them? Okay. They can come around if you just keep your hand raised. They'll hand you a note card if you don't have a pen. I think we have some pens back there. Those are just for as we go through the moderated portion of the event. If you have questions for the candidates, write those down, bring them back to the table, and then when we go into the Q&A later on tonight, we will be asking those. Just a warning with that though, if we get multiple questions on the same thing, we'll just try and consolidate that just for time's sake, because we want to try and keep things going as we continue on. Our plan is to start out with the candidates introducing themselves. We're going to give each of you 3 minutes to introduce. Phoenix, you can raise your hand. Phoenix is going to have cards throughout this entire thing. One is for 1 minute, one's for 30 seconds, one is for 10 seconds. So this is going to be your timekeeper. So as you speak, she'll hold those up as you go along. Feel free to just have your own little timekeeper next to you. That's totally fine. We're just going to go off with Phoenix's for the official one. Just if you want to keep pace to yourself, that's totally fine. After that, we are going to go into moderated questions, which our dear Senator Aiden Vollmer here is going to be doing that, in which you're going to have 2 minutes per question. Again, same thing, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds. And we're going to start with Phil for the first question, and then go along in the row, and then John for the second, so on and so forth, etc. Feel free to have your own timer if you want. And finally, before we start with our first question, just want to give a few thanks. First of all, I want to thank all 5 of you for coming and participating in this. We greatly appreciate you coming to campus and joining us this evening. Second of all, I want to thank everyone in my commission for helping put this together and everyone who worked on it. Not that I'm biased or anything, but I do think we are the best commission. Again, not biased whatsoever. I don't get paid to do this, but I'm very thankful that you are all a part in my commission and helped put this together. And finally, I want to thank all of you, the audience, for showing up and engaging with us and with this event. So I'm just truthfully beyond grateful for that. If anyone has any questions throughout the events, any questions, concerns, or anything, feel free to flag me down. I'm going to be sitting with Gavin and Michael in the back, but just like raise your hand and be like, Allie, I need help. Something, get my attention, feel free. I'll come over and try and answer any questions to the best of my ability. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get started with the first question. Aiden, feel free to take us away.
Ready?
Introductions?
Are we gonna do
Oh,
intros
yes,
first?
so yeah, we're gonna go to the introductions first. Yeah, you'll only take 3 minutes. Keep it hard for time, Phil, we can start. Start with, use the microphone, that way.
I'm kind of a nervous talker, so I'm gonna stand. Helps with my nervous energy. And thank you, Aiden, for having me and the student senate. This is wonderful, and I love these shoes. I also, before I introduce myself, I want to thank everyone for being here, the incumbents and the challenger, John. I was on the board previously, and these board positions, by my estimation, 20, 30 hours a week, and are largely volunteer and in service to the community. So I think it's great that people are putting themselves out there and being a part of this tonight. So my name is Phil Lyons. I previously served on the board from 2019 to 2023. And how did I get involved in the board? Well, it really started with volunteering within the district. I went to maple syrup farms. I took kids out on the glacier trail. I dealt blackjack at the all-night commencement parties. Orchestra fundraisers, sold tickets, and you get to meet the students, you get to meet the teachers, you start to really care about the district. From there, I ended up volunteering for the Demographic and Trends Committee. Demographic and Trends Committee is the committee, it used to be a board committee, now it's an administrative committee that takes a look at seats and the populations within the school and how we might better balance populations across the district. That became a seat on the board, and it was an experience that I really enjoyed, that I cherished. I felt that I was a very impactful board member. I chaired the Budget Development Committee, which then became the Referendum Committee. Traveled around with many board members and the superintendent and the finance officer at the time, talking about the benefits of that capital referendum that addressed a lot of the building deficiencies at the time. I was the board treasurer. I served on the Head Start Committee. I served as a CC10 rep. There were many times that with Commissioner Bica, we interviewed the student reps for the school board. It was one of my favorite kind of activities, as well as a whole variety of things. I think I missed one board meeting the entire time that I was serving as commissioner. And I tried to make that. I was actually in Puerto Rico, and I had that connection set up, but apparently the IT firewall stopped us from having that, so I had to continue on my vacation. But anyway, why am I running? I'm running because I am also a product of public education. The very fact that I'm standing in front of you today has a long list of mentors, teachers, administrators that all helped me in one way to succeed. It's something that's important to me that we find a way that every student in this community has the same kind of access to public education, the same kind of opportunities that were bestowed upon me. It's really about gratitude. It's really about paying it back. It's really about serving this community and giving the knowledge. I guess I should mention I spent 15 years working at UW Stout. I was the vice chancellor of administration, and I always kind of brought that perspective, not only on the facility side, but had some background in budgets and things like that. So in a roundabout way, I felt, a little bit of the financial conscience of the board at the time. I think I probably have time by now.
Yeah, you are out of
Yeah,
time.
okay, thank you.
Oh, okay, you were hoping.
Hi, my name's John Moskal. With 3 minutes, I'm just gonna talk about my background. Maybe later on we can talk, if I have time, get into why I'm running. Because I'm kind of an unknown, even though I've lived in this community for 32 years. All 3 of my kids have been born here and raised in a public school system, so I've seen a lot of what I would call good and bad in the 32 years that I've lived in this community. My background, I think what I'm gonna tell you here in the next few minutes says a lot about how my family values education and the teachers that provide it. I have two degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, first in physical therapy. I worked in that field for 8 years, working with a whole variety of different people. People when they're in some of their most anxious, worst moments where they've lost something related to their health, and you have to really work hard to gain their trust and to motivate them to do things that they necessarily want to do. I went back and got my MBA from Wisconsin in finance and marketing. I had many job offers coming out of that program. I decided to go to work for a top tier consulting company, worked on a clinical financial information system database for 2 years for a nationwide healthcare approach. Very interesting, covered all kinds of different things, heavy on finance. After that, I decided to stay in healthcare, and I finished my career last May. I worked 32 years in the medical device industry, not pharma, but medical device. And I spent about 16 years in the lab and 16 years in the operating room. Areas that are very technical require, you to learn fast, become that perceived expert. High stress, got to be on your toes, working with a variety of people from CEOs, finance, purchasing, some surgeons with big egos. You got to know what you're doing quick. And during that time, I can't tell you how many customers told me flat out, you're the best rep that I ever worked with. Flat out, you care, you're organized, you detail, you don't lie. If you say you're going to do something, you do it, you follow up, and we value that. You're the kind of guy we want to do business with. So with that being said, my wife also is a graduate of Manila State. She's a critical care nurse for the last 32 years at Mayo. You don't ever want to see her, but if you ever have to be in critical care, you have her, you darn well know you got one of the best nurses around. All 3 of our kids went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison and graduated chemical engineering, environmental science, and genetics. One has gone on to get his MBA from Cal Berkeley, one of the most highly regarded business schools in the country. Another one's working on her teacher certificate so she can teach science and environmental health. And our third child's, after being accepted to 4 vet schools, is going back to Madison this fall for the veterinary medicine school. So that's kind of an introduction to who I am, and probably kind of lends you to understand why I might want to run for school board and how valuable education is to me and my family.
Okay, first, huge thanks to our student senators for hosting this forum. We all know that it takes a lot of effort to plan this kind of an event. And I think of all the elections taking place, the school board can be the one that is overlooked. But not this time, because our student senators know that public schools are the heart of our community and schools are going to drive its future. So if each one of us here tonight can go out and talk with, 3, 10, 5, 10 others about the importance of voting for school board candidates on April 7th, that we're going to make a significant difference for all current blue goals, future blue goals, and the whole rest of the community. I want to thanking everyone else for joining us tonight, taking the time. I'm Dr. Lori Bica, very proud to be able to share that I've been a school board member in Eau Claire since 2017, and I've directly contributed to every major board initiative since that time. I've served as the board treasurer, budget committee member, and since 2019, I've been the board vice president. I personally ran the national search for our new superintendent, and I served as a planning committee member for the successful ECASD referendums in 2022 and 2024. So I offer the experience, trustworthiness, and commitment for a successful and productive school board member. My primary career also contributes directly to my abilities on the school board. I earned a PhD in developmental psychology. I focus primarily on children and adolescents. And in 2000, I joined the psychology department here at UW-Eau Claire. In addition to my work as a professor, I served as a department chair for 6 years. It afforded extensive experience in areas such as curriculum and assessment, financials, budget, equity and diversity, facilities, contract negotiation, and personnel evaluation. So really my entire professional life has been devoted to education, students, youth, and their welfare and their success.
Thank you. First, I want to echo the other candidates that has thanked the students for organizing the forum and all the students that are here today and community members that are here today. My name is Thao. My pronouns are she, hers. And I'm very much first a mother. I have 5 children. My oldest is 20, my youngest is 7, and they all have gone is in the Eau Claire School District, attending Monastery and Moskal. I'm also a community advocate and a nonprofit leader. And I'm running for school board because I believe that each student deserves to be seen, supported, and to be resourced to be successful. My journey coming here, I was a child refugee from Panama. So when we came here, I was only 12 years old. And I entered the 4th grade, not knowing any English, not understanding anything that was going on around me. And so that experience going through the public school system has really informed why I am passionate about public education, and why I'm committed to really ensuring that every student feels seen, supported, and heard in our district. My professional work, I am a nonprofit leader, so I co-founded the Black and Brown Women Power Coalition, and that's the only Black and Brown-led coalition in the state that works with domestic violence and sexual assault victims and survivors, and with victim service providers providing trainings, medical assistance, and all of the good things that goes into really making sure that survivors and victims get what they need to live a life free of violence. Currently, I am also the founder and managing director of Power of Eau Claire, and that is a civic engagement, community power building organization that focuses on amplifying the voices of our community members here who are often underheard or underrepresented in the civic sector. Yeah, so I'm like, because I want to make sure that our schools are a place where all students feel belong, right? I think belonging is really important because when we all feel belonged, we want to achieve more, we want to invest more, we want to give more to our community. So I want to really be able to do that in the district.
Hello, my name is Jarrett Dement. I am the current school board treasurer for the Eau Claire School District. Before I get too much into myself, I want to also share my thanks to the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire and the Student Senate for hosting this, as well as to all of you and the candidates for showing up and having this discussion with us. So about myself, I am an Army veteran. I am a proud UW-Eau Claire alum, and I'm also a substitute teacher for several school districts around the area. The most important reason that I'm running is to continue to support our students, to make sure that each student gets what they need to succeed, that each student feels safe and welcome in our schools, and to continue advocating for our schools at the state and federal level. I don't know if you guys know this, but our funds come from the state budget, so please vote for those elections as well. I think I can safely say that everybody who wants to lift up each child, everybody who wants each child to succeed. So I'll focus on what is different about me. Like I said, I'm a substitute teacher. I currently substitute teach at Altoona, Chippewa Falls, Osceola Fairchild. Once in a great while, I go back to Lincoln Junior Senior High School, where I originally taught full time. So I'm in the classroom right now. I'm seeing the stresses and I'm seeing the fault lines in the school. I'm seeing what it's like when we don't have enough money to fund special education. I'm seeing what it's like when we don't have enough money to fund building upkeep. And so that's really important to me to continue to work with our state federal programs to continue to try to get us adequate funding so that we can, achieve these lofty goals for the district. So yeah, that's me, Jarrett Dement, vote equal seven. Thank you.
Thank you all for those introductions. So we're gonna move straight into our predetermined questions. And the first person to respond is gonna be Phil. We're gonna go down the line. So the first question this evening is gonna be, several Wisconsin school districts are suing the state legislature, claiming that the current school funding system is unconstitutional. This is on the basis that the state funding hasn't kept pace with rising costs, forcing school districts to rely on property tax referendums. What is your stance on this lawsuit, and do you feel that this lawsuit is a good way for school districts to advocate for a change to the funding system?
Well, we get to start with an easy one. Yes, the state funding system has been broken a long time. And one of the reasons why it's such a difficult thing to fix is back in the historical eons of what created this. Eau Claire was a low spending district. And so there was, we got our funding set at that point. On the flip side, La Crosse was a high spending district and they got their state subsidies set higher. It's never changed and there's winners and losers. I support, of course, everyone in this district should support the fact that this lawsuit is going forward. Whether it's constitutional, I'm a finance guy. I don't know the law. I hope we win, but I tell you what it is, it's unfair. It's unfair when you take the state funding and you divide it into student headcount. You realize the difference between Eau Claire and La Crosse. It's just not right, and it needs to be fixed. What was the second part of that?
Do you feel it's a good way? Do you feel that this is a good way for the school districts to advocate for change?
I do feel like this is a good way because the typical ways of trying to advocate within the legislature just haven't worked. We've been working on this issue for a very long time, and this new approach, I think, actually could maybe move the needle. At least it keeps it right out in front of people so that districts across the state understand that this is a broken system, that's not fair, it's not equitable, and it absolutely needs to be fixed.
Oh, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt quick. I just wanted to say, if you ever need me to restate the question for any reason, feel free to do so. It won't cut into your time. Sure.
Yes, I absolutely actually wish the lawsuit would have been filed several years ago so that we're not in such a critical state as we are now. If nothing else, if it's not successful, at least it brings awareness to a lot more people who don't understand what's going on with how the state funds and how players have really been shortchanged for many years. So I'm absolutely for it. And I'm not sure about the timing or why now, but like I said, I wish it would have, could have happened years ago. And I wish more schools or own state would have been on a kind of a unified banner.
So as a member of the school board who filed this lawsuit, yes, we're very much in favor of it. We join 18 other plaintiffs, includes school districts, teachers unions, educational advocacy groups, parents, community members, students. It is a landmark lawsuit. And I will say that failure to fund public education in not only our state, but across the country, I think of it as one of the most significant moral issues of our time. Schools are forced to slash budgets and turn to local taxpayers to cover even the most basic of operating expenses. So the fault for this crisis lies not at the feet of families or certainly not teachers, district administrators, or even school boards. Our state has both the resources and the constitutional obligation to do better. But the legislature has seemingly abandoned the commitment to educate our children, especially those with high needs. And Wisconsin has a duty to fully fund public education.
I want to echo what Bica has said and really add that our schools deserve to be funded appropriately, right, at a rate that we can provide resources to all of our students. We see where education, special education rates at the state are a lot lower, right, than what they have promised. In our district, we need to be reimbursed at a level that we can provide utmost services to our most vulnerable students. It is not just about money, but I really believe that where we put money is where our morals are, right? If we want to prioritize public education, prioritize services to students, and really make sure our students get what they need to be able to graduate from high school and move on to other career pathways, we need to invest in our students. So it's a matter of investing, and it's a moral obligation from our state senators in our state.
Yeah, I would also say that I agree with this lawsuit. Over the past several decades, the state legislature and specifically the Wisconsin GOP have systematically defunded not just public education, but public services across the state. This has been an issue for decades, and the legislature has demonstrated a complete unwillingness to address the issue. So in my opinion, this is our last level. It's our last stick that we can use to poke the people deciding where the money goes. And you know, just to demonstrate some of that unwillingness, I do want to remind everybody that we still have a budget surplus in Madison of at least $2 billion that could fundamentally change our Wisconsin state school system. But instead of doing anything with that money, they're just kind of holding on to it. Another example is Act 20, which is a bill that was passed a couple of years ago now that changed the way we teach reading and literacy in our schools. That requires new curriculums, that requires new training, that requires teachers to spend time learning all of this stuff. And instead of providing the funds to do that, that has also been locked up in Madison from the Joint Finance Committee. So yeah, if they're not going to fund their schools, then absolutely, we're going to sue them until they do. So thank you.
Thank you all for those thoughtful responses. So also going forward, it didn't happen during this, but if you ever go over your 2-minute time limit, we are gonna interrupt you, cut you off, make sure you keep going.
My question.
Yeah, so moving into the second question, we just talked about the funding crisis. So given the current funding structure, what are your top priorities for allocating our limited resources, starting with John?
Well, I want all the teachers to know how much they're, you know, everybody wants to make as much money as they possibly can in their working career, but people also want to work for a culture organization where they know they're valued, where they're listened to, and where they're respected. So teachers will always know that I have their back, and that includes making sure that we have safe schools. And I'm 100% for maintaining our school resource officers, which I understand is threatened to be cut. Recent school board meeting, we heard four of them present, and there was a couple students who came forward and talked about how, not only besides from the safety aspect, but what they've done for them to kind of lift them up and help them, you know, believe in themselves through different interaction with those school safety resource officers. So I want to, I think we also, you know, well, I talked about college in our family, right? And college is no more necessarily automatic anymore. I think we need to, one of the doors I knocked on, as I've been going around, is a union steward. And he told me that he approached both North and Memorial, and he was completely blown off by administration to help, you know, set up a better vocational technical education program. And I think we need to put some effort and money into developing a better VOTEC program, which flourished when I was in high school. And I also think we need to focus on doing everything we can to control class sizes, because there's so many studies out there that have shown how, you know, proper class sizes are really critical for teaching. And when you get to be too big, too many students in a room, the things just don't go that well from an education standpoint. So those are some comments I had to that question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that top priorities are going to always be ensuring that each child in our community thrives in excellent public schools. You know, that we have the very best educators and that all of our district employees have what they need to flourish. So I'm going to talk about sort of three investment priorities that are going to need particular focus in the next few years. And the first one we captured in the initial question, it is investing in political activism. So we need to keep the pressure on elected officials at every level to support public education, particularly the state legislature. I would also talk about it as an investment is going to be a 2028 referendum, all right? Because our state has failed its constitutional duty to support public education, and unless there is radical restructuring at the state level, we're going to ask our community for its support. And Eau Claire is committed to outstanding education, and together we're going to set the bar high for our district. And then I'll also speak about managing course enrollments as a priority. So Eau Claire is experiencing overall city growth, but the school district enrollment actually continues to decline with lower birth rates and demographic shifts. We have a balanced budget this year, but without some strategic action, future budgets are going to face pressure. So effectively managing the actually declining enrollment and underutilized facilities is essential to ensure equitable access to space and high impact programming for each student in the district.
I always support teachers, right? I think that's when it comes down to being under resource and not having enough to go around for everything that we want to do for our students. The one thing that I think we should always invest in is the people that are with our students for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. They're the one that our students see more than they see their parents during the school year. They are the one that are like second parents to some of the students that may come from broken homes or homes that may not that have parents that work more outside the home, right? So investment in our teachers, make sure they have the resources that they need, that they feel invested in and welcomed, and that we build a culture of with our teachers, right, to really work with students. Secondly, I think investing in really closing the educational gap in the district between underrepresented students, underserved students, and the majority of the students. We have a moral obligation, I really think, to make sure that we are investing in folks who are underserved and be able to provide services and resources to help our students also close that gap.
All right, so real quick, I do want to actually add a slight correction to John's comment. The SRO program at ECIC is not under threat at all. Nobody's considering closing it. Several of our board members have expressed concerns regarding the research showing that contact with SROs leads to greater contact with police as adults. But there are no plans to get rid of those SROs. Anyways, as far as financial focus and so, like my other candidates have said, teacher pay and benefits. Being a teacher myself, that one's close to my heart. If it was up to me, every teacher would be a millionaire. Unfortunately, that's not the reality we live in. But yeah, teachers are what make schools happen. They are the ones doing the thing. So we need to make sure that they are not just compensated appropriately, but that they are supported emotionally and mentally as well. The other focus that I want to bring attention to is special education programming. Because of the Americans with Disability Act, we are required to provide SPED services to every student that is legally an obligation, but it's also morally and ethically the right thing to do. However, because of the way special education funding works, the state does not provide the entirety of the funds for that. So what ends up happening is that we have to take money out of other funds to provide those services. That's the problem, because that means our mainstream students or general education students are not, they're being shortchanged. We're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and that's the problem.
Sorry, I got sick. Budgets are really a list of priorities, and the board sets those priorities. The administration takes a look at where to allocate those funds. Where are my priorities? The biggest priority in the public school system is teaching. So to keep those resources focused on that teaching, it's a very important thing. Number two, we are facing this district competition from places with that we hadn't seen prior to this. A couple of academies are coming in, and I think that the district ought to consider investing in a recruitment and retention program. We're sending 200 students. We are sending 700 students out in open enrollment, and 200 are coming in. If we could capture 43 of those students with $500,000, it adds to a lot of things. It's a way to address that declining enrollment. And if you save 5 students through a recruitment and retention program, that position will pay for itself. So like what Lori was saying, it's an investment. And then finally, one of the things that I was really focused in on when I was on the board, and wasn't successful with this, but I still like to keep trying, is extracurricular activities. One of the things that in this district we haven't funded well is the increments. The increments are the pay that teachers get for doing those extracurricular out of classroom activities. They haven't increased in something like 20 years. It says to me that we don't value those. Thanks.
Okay, now moving past questions on funding. The third question is going to be, what is your stance on curriculum transparency, and should parents be involved in looking over instructional materials for their child? Starting with Lori.
So I guess I think about curricular transparency in terms of what we're seeing more with book bans or curricular action. I'm gonna, as was to the first thing, I would say that anything that shifts decision making away from educators is the wrong move. So efforts to try to manage curriculums, typically driven by some form of political pressure, perhaps anecdotes or personal opinions, and not data-driven or research-based. So trained educators, educational professionals are really in the best position to make the decision about curriculum. I think challenges to curriculum limit students' access to knowledge, limit their academic achievement, restrict intellectual freedom, and can have broad social implications. So and to the question, I think about with the curriculum and for educators, freedom of thought and expression, developing critical thinking skills, restrictions that target, particular groups or perspectives, disproportionately affecting books, say a curriculum about racism, LGBTQ, historical injustices, silencing marginalized voices, and making certain students feel unseen or excluded. Think about distorting education and history, and then I said, to repeat, is taking the decision-making away from educators.
How teachers should be able to teach students based on what their expertise are in the expert areas. I believe our teachers are experts in teaching age-appropriate content, education to our students. We have curriculum that's been developed with appropriate age content in mind. And so I think, I really think, you know, we pay our educators to educate our children, and they have the education that they need, right, to be able to teach our students. So that's right.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Lloyd and Paul as well. We should trust experts to do their jobs. That's what we pay them for. So let them do their jobs. Parents always have ways to influence the curriculum, to engage with teachers, to engage with the school board. We live in a democracy. There are avenues to do that if you really feel passionately. But like I said, at the end of the day, we should trust experts to do their job.
I generally like transparency across the board. When you're not transparent about things, people develop their own worst, they go to their own worst imagination. So I think about public education, and I've talked about it before being a public trust. Let's call it a public partnership. And it's a partnership between this community and the taxpayers and the students and the parents. And so dialogues about these things, I absolutely agree that the professionals should be allowed to do their job. But it's also, it's a community-based kind of conversation. And I think that as a board that's elected, we ought to be hearing those kind of comments from the community, from the public, and especially from the parents. I started off saying that, these are largely volunteer positions and take 20 to 30 hours a week. Well, a lot of those are emails and phone calls that are coming after board meetings that are from the folks that live across the street from you. So I believe in transparency across the board is a good thing, and I'm not sure you can get enough of it. So.
Hey, and just repeat the question one more time since that's the last one.
Yes, so, what is your stance on curriculum transparency, and should parents be involved in reviewing instructional materials for their child?
I believe our educators are the ones who should lead that and teach that. They're the professionals, as mentioned, that we hire and we pay and we have trust and confidence in. Completely against any kind of book banning. I mean, my dad was a combat veteran in World War II. He's long gone, but it reminds me way too much of, I'm sorry, Nazi Germany when you talk about banning books, and that's just ridiculous. So, and transparency, I mean, that's just a great policy no matter what you're doing in life. I think there are ways for parents to get involved through PTA if they're concerned in that, but again, I think really it should be left up to our educators that we trust and value, and that they know that, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to know that I have their back. So.
Okay, thank you all for those responses. Moving on to our fourth question. What is your view on standardized testing and its role in evaluating student success? Starting with Thao.
Thank you. I think standardized testing are not always created with students in mind. It doesn't take into instances students who have limited English skills or language learners. You may limit students who has cognitive needs like ADHD. So I think standard testing can be very hard. It doesn't necessarily show or prove a student's skills necessarily in that content area. I think there are other ways that we can critically test students for results without having them sit and share and take a test.
So as a teacher, standardized testing is the bane of my existence. It ruins the entire flow of the day. It takes up way too much time, and it's annoying for everyone. However, standardized testing does have uses when we're trying to evaluate systems, when we're trying to see what a population is doing, how a population is learning or achieving. But we run into issues where we start trying to apply that to individuals or to individual teachers to assess their teaching abilities. So standardized testing is good for collecting data to evaluate a whole system. It is not good for evaluating a student's learning or evaluating a teacher's teaching.
Yeah, standardized teaching is really a double-edged sword. When we were at Stout, when I was at Stout, in the admissions process, we always looked at GPA from the students that were transferring in. Why was that? Because ACT, SAT was never a very good indicator of success in college. The grade point average was how hard you worked in school. Really, ACTs and SATs, as an example of standardized testing, they test how well you can take a test. It isn't necessarily about learning and about being able to apply yourself. Now, as Jarrett said, it does have some uses when you're trying to compare areas across the different districts, and you're trying to look for that common denominator. You need something to be able to measure where students are at, and so it does. It's a double-edged sword. It doesn't test education very well, but it is a measure by some sort.
I think, I don't disagree with anything that any of the other four said. When my customers would ask me a question, if I wasn't an expert on that or didn't know the answer, I'd tell them. I don't make up stuff. You know where you stand with me. I don't, you start making stuff up and people can tell you don't know what you're talking about right away. So I would say this is a topic that, present time I'm not an expert on. But my work ethic would drive me to, uncover what I need to know about this topic for sure. But I think that everything that was said here by the four candidates makes perfect sense to me. So that's what I'll leave that.
Yeah, I think both as a researcher myself and as a school board member, I value all forms of data. Thinking about standardized tests that are research-based, they are data-driven. In the school district, we use a holistic assessment. So we consider standardized testing, of course, for the comparisons. If it's between schools, between school districts, across different states. We also rely heavily on local assessments, that are designed within our district and by our educators. And so for me, it really is about, multi-method, data collection, research-based decision-making, and thinking about the way that the standardized tests are benchmarks. They're not the be-all, end-all, but they give information, as part of a much larger picture that we need.
Okay, moving on to our final question before questions from the audience. Why should voters choose you over any of the other candidates, starting with Jared?
Right, I gotta stand up too, I'm getting antsy as well. So, like I said, the things that set me apart are the fact that I'm currently in the classroom. Like I said, I've seen where the stress points are. A couple of weeks ago, I got the opportunity to sub for a special education teacher in Altoona, and I had never been so tired in my life. My feet hurt all day. I was in like 6 different classrooms. I was supporting 1,000 different students. All of them were different each class period. It's crazy. So I'm bringing that first-hand experience, that lived experience to the board. Additionally, like I said, I'm also an Army vet. I've spent my entire life serving the community, any community I could find. That's what my life is about, service. So I'm smart, I'm honest, I'm gonna put kids first. I think that's why you should vote for me. Thank you.
I was going to say. Why should you vote for me? So I think I mentioned in my introduction that I had spent some time as the Vice Chancellor of Administration at BW staff. And one of the things that I thought, everyone up here, I think, is very capable candidate. What I think that I bring, just a little bit different, is I didn't come through education. I haven't taught. And what I have done is I've been in that role of resource allocation. And so when I was on the board, 2019 to 2023, I was the person that was kind of looking at those budget items, or looking at the return of investment, or looking at the resource allocation and asking those kind of questions as a board member. And now I think it's even more relevant with declining enrollments, with self-insurance on health, with some of the things that the district is facing right now. I think having someone with a little bit of a background in some financial jobs might not be necessarily a bad thing.
One of the houses that I recently knocked on was a retired superintendent from Moskal. And his 3 kids live over in the Twin Cities, so he decided he wanted to be closer to them, but not over there. So this is perfect for him. He loves over there. In our conversation, we talked about, Oshkosh will play very similar. 2 public schools, Catholic school, Lutheran school. 6 of the 7 current board members have education background. Any successful board the board preaches diversity. Any successful board must have diversity in its background, in the people that are on it with their experiences. I have a strong business, sales, marketing, finance background. When we have to go to referendum again, which eventually will happen, having the sales and marketing background is going to be very beneficial for that. And trying to do whatever we can do to prevent that too with my background will be very beneficial. I think when you're running for a position like this, you have to have time. I have the time. I've thought about doing this for a long time. I never had the time. And frankly, I've seen so many people on the board that have a full-time job, young kids. I don't know how they do it. But Phil mentioned the job takes about 20 to 25 hours a week. I have the energy, I'm blessed with good health. Anybody who knows me in my personal and professional life would describe me as somebody who's reliable, dependable. You can count on me. And I don't have any distractions from my personal life that would take away from my focus. I've been married for 37 years, and that's important too. You also have to have the interest and the passion to run for a position like this. And the passion for education runs deep in me, throughout my whole family. And I love this town. I love our school district. All 3 of my kids have gone through here. And our district needs some help. We're facing a challenge. We can blame it on the finances from the state as much as we want. That's all true. But we have to do the best we can with the resources as well.
So in my opening remarks, I mentioned that I'm fortunate, I'm a senior school board member at this point, serving since 2017. Senior in years of service and also age, I'm proud to say. So in some ways, you kind of know me or like what I've been doing, or you don't. I mean, I'm kind of speaking very directly like that. Like I said, I've been involved in every board initiative, going on now 9 years now. I feel as I said, I'm trustworthy, committed, that I have the background. I talked about my professional life as a school board member, as a psychology professor, as a department chair. I guess to speak a little bit to the business finance side of things, as and certainly, for an effective school board member, you need someone who really kind of has that holistic preparation. So all aspects of education, all aspects of district functioning. Kind of on the business finance side, I want to just speaking for myself. I've been responsible for about 9 years now for a multi-million-dollar school district. I spent 6 years before that managing one of the largest departments at UW-Eau Claire. And I too founded and I run a local organization. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. I'll give you that, but it's a business nonetheless.
I'm bringing with me a very unique and different perspective than the rest of the candidates and the rest of the board. I really believe that my lived experience as a child refugee, as a mom, as someone that has gone through the Oakland School District, and as someone that has worked with and against the district in many different ways over the years, right? It really gave me the different nuances between what community needs and what community, and what the district is able to give and not give, right? And so I think being an organizer, and a nonprofit leader has allowed me to like really see the push and pull of like systems and institutions like this, like the school district, right? And what we are hungry for. And I think it's the hunger that like really drives my passion and my commitment to really making sure that all communities' voices are heard in all aspects. That families who often go overlooked, voices that are not heard all the time or people don't care about, right? That they are centered at the table. And I always tell people that if we're not at the table, then we're the meal, right? And I want to make sure that we are, that my community is represented, and that we have representation for all community, all different aspects of the community to be able to make decisions that impact all of our students.
Thank you all for those meaningful introductions to why we should specifically vote for you. We're gonna move into a brief 5-minute pause before we go into our question and answer period. Feel free to get a drink of water or do whatever.
You're out here.
This is Max's pen. Dean of Students Office. Try not.
Okay, so we're gonna move into the question and answer period. We got a lot of questions, so we're gonna try to get through as many as we can. We have the room until 8 o'clock. So if we don't get to your question, we're sorry about that. Just, yeah, try to make your way, maybe find the candidate if they're open for question afterwards. So moving into our first question. What do you see as the greatest challenge that AI poses to student learning and intellectual development, starting with Phil? Actually, we can start with Jarrett since the microphone's over there.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, you said question one more time, please.
Yes. So what do you see as the greatest challenge that AI poses to student learning and intellectual development?
So AI, in case you're unfamiliar, is a giant copyright violation. So to begin with, the fact that everybody's data has been fed into it, and there's no repercussions for that, is a blight in our society. Additionally, the use of AI to outsource our thinking is going to be an issue. I generally view AI as a tool, just like the calculator changed math class, AI is going to change history, English, and social studies, and everything else. But we have to make sure that we are teaching kids to, one, not trust it because it can lie to you, and also that they can't be using it to outsource, again, the critical thinking skills. The human has to be doing the thinking, and then using the tool to help with implementation. So. I assume back to Phil. All right, just work your way down. Go ahead.
I think I saw on television or one of the investment programs that AI will be able to write music better than artists themselves. I don't want to live in that world. I think the greatest challenge is that, you know, human creativity isn't about bits and two-digit programming formulas. Education is about experience, it's about learning, and it's about growing. And I think that AI could challenge all of those things in making a lot of the things that we learn not necessarily you just look it up. And so that's my fear with AI.
Some financial experts say AI is going to transform everything. Others say it'll be not quite as much as we think, but I don't believe that. I think AI will definitely affect students' critical thinking. As was said already, I totally agree with that. Education is all about critical thinking, not taking things at face value, using your mind, your brain, different experiences to think about, is this truth or not, right? And that's a big thing we're already seeing right now in our society, so much false information, so much fake information, and trying to sort through and understand what's real, what's not real. I think that's gonna affect, challenge creativity of students. That's kind of what you said. I totally agree with that. And, yeah, it's overall something that's very concerning and something that we're gonna have to battle with it. I think also that the chance of cheating and having the work, done, not by you, but in a creative way or thinking way, so that's my comments on AI.
Yeah, so I experience it regularly in the classroom, college students, all kinds of assignments, projects, papers. To maybe speak in a little bit of a different perspective. For learning and intellectual capability, I really do think of AI as an effective tool. It's great for just getting some ideas down on the page, and for students that might have trouble, you're getting going on a writing assignment, right? So it's a writing start, and that experience of sitting there, stuck, for a long time, not being able to get going, I see it really helping students. Not everybody has the ability to just, you sit down and just write profusely, So I've seen a lot of benefits, perspective taking, posing a question. I didn't think about that before. And it's a different way to look at the issue. So I think there are a lot of benefits, thinking within education, and then as the other folks here said, a lot of drawbacks, not telling you anything that you probably all don't already know, and the critical thinking negatively affecting writing skills, analysis, synthesis, integration, the originality of ideas, creative process, the research skills, all of this can become, stuck by AI. So I really think it's a matter of finding out, really knowing how to use it most effectively with students.
I agree with a lot of things that have already been said. I think one of the things that really pose challenges to students is our social emotional connections with others. But we're not learning from each other, we're not talking to each other. And I think AI, using AI I think it's good as a tool, but to teach our students to use it as a tool to put them in their learning, right? But not to use it as a way to form connections or to get away from having relationships with other people. My children go to monastery where we have multi-age classrooms, right? And so the older students are able to reinforce what they learned by teaching younger students what they've learned. And those kind of connections are connections that we need to make sure that stays in our school districts, right? And that's not going to be taken away by the usage of AI or encouraging students to use AI in that way.
Okay, now starting with Phil. How do you feel about the current cuts being made to music and arts in our schools, specifically looking toward the cuts at Music and Memorial? And what will you do to protect student programming from being cut?
Yeah, I just heard about those cuts and did a little kind of digging. First off, I don't have enough information to be able to really, give a solid answer on that. But this, I think that we're going to see the effects of COVID for a very long time. And I think with music and with band at the high school, what you've seen is kids that were in middle school during COVID, when you really couldn't get that entryway into music and into band. So we're going to see a dip in that enrollment. And as I understand, the administration aligned the FTE, the full-time equivalents teachers with enrollments. So that's what I believe. But I mean, the true answer of what is really at the core of the problem is that the enrollments are declining. And at the administration and and the board evaluates the supervisor, makes some financial decisions based on, headcount in schools. If those headcounts in the schools were higher, there would be no need or no reason to cut any, FTE at all. And I really wish, that I could dig in and see some of the student headcount numbers versus, the teacher separations that occurred, because that's really the data that I haven't been privy to, that, the question was, what would I do? You know, at this point, I just don't have some of those financial indicators to be able to see what the trends are, because it's a very complicated question.
And that's time.
I think it is, when you're on the outside looking, it's really hard because you don't have all the facts, but I was shocked by it, saddened by it. I had one parent share a post to me about how a lot of good money was spent remodeling and updating the music room and memorial, and then all of a sudden this happens. It's kind of like having a really nice car to drive, but maybe no gas to put it, you know. This is an arts music community. We draw a lot of people here for different events because of that. I think that, you know, with declining enrollment due to a number of different things, including competition from other options like, you know, the private schools or homeschooling or virtual schooling, I think we as a public school need to do everything we can to separate ourselves on how we're different, whether it's Montessori, whether that's great extracurricular activities. My kids got, you know, some of the best benefits and memories from the different extracurricular activities that they participated in. So I'd like to see all of those programs remain strong, because I just think they're great for creativity and their overall educational experience. Yeah, I think that's, but yeah, very, very sad to see that happen and disappointed.
So the arts and music, these are the places where many children, you know, find their community. And I'm a mother of 2 children, went through the Eau Claire schools. I would say music kids, band kids specifically. What's been mentioned already is that, yeah, the problems are we have declining enrollment in the school district. So we have overall growth in the city, but fewer students in our schools, with changes to birth rates and other demographic shifts. Yes, we are still recovering from COVID. My kids were the COVID band kids, where, you know, you were playing your drums online, you know, synchronously with, you know, we all lived through that. Let's not live through that ever again. But we're still in recovery. So music participation is down overall, and also students are choosing other things, you know, that's available in the schools instead of music and art. We're going to do everything we can to protect our programs. We have a huge investment in those programs. We're going to keep the core programs strong, but schools cannot do it alone. You're right, Eau Claire, we are a music town. We are an arts town. And so we really need to come together around these programs in a way like we have never before.
Like Lori always said, enrollment and FTEs really ties into, enrollment really ties into the number of FTEs that a district can have for teachers and different programs. And it was I think it's a extremely difficult decisions, right? But we don't have the resources that we need to continue having the program that we want for our students to participate in, and then at the same time, we'll have enough students to teach. So I trust that our administrators are making the best decisions that they can, given the constraints of what we're facing with. And I, was really glad to hear that our students are still going, our students will still have programming, right? We're still going to have jazz and band with the 1 FTE teachers. And so that opportunity still exists. It's not being cut altogether, but to really reduce the FTEs that that we have to in order to make sure that we can keep our district, in line with our budget and all that.
Yeah, I think everybody said basically what I'm going to say as well. Over the past 10 years, music enrollment at Memorial has declined by 40%. Again, that's 10 years, so that's not just because of COVID. I'm sure that has some effect on it. But this is a long-term problem. We have less students. We have less students choosing music. And another thing that I'd like to point out regarding this is that North High School has one FTE, so one full-time music staff, and they have roughly the same amount of students as Memorial. Not to say that everything needs to look exactly the same, but North High School is very successful with their music program, and as Paul just said, we're not losing any programming from this. We're still going to have jazz band and all of the good stuff. One thing I do want to make clear is I'm also an arts guy. I used to volunteer with the Triple Valley Theater Guild. I used to be on their board. This is not something that I'm happy about. But by freeing up that one FTE, we're able to get a teacher in another department where we may have greater need for it. And like Paul said, I'm going to trust our experts, trust our administrators to make those decisions, because that's what we pay them the big bucks for. Keep it down here. Let's go to John.
Okay, so starting with John, with all of the challenges and struggles facing the district, what ideas do you have for possibly innovative programs, and how do you make space for that?
Well, I mentioned that, I think we need to do a better job, with, vocational technical education. I think, strong relationship with CBTC. I've heard honors programs have kind of been done away with. I don't know if in the name of equity, we're kind of bringing, other people down, I don't know, but honors programs I think are really important. I think AP programs are very important. I know my kids, in college, they were able to reduce their credit loads significantly, and keep moving forward faster. So I think those are really important things to keep. I agree with Phil about the extracurricular and how it just hasn't, no increase in 20 years. I mean, what kind of message does that send, about how we value that? So extracurricular is so important. And I think we need to do things in our district as much as we can to try to separate ourselves and show value that we have over somebody like Regis or, a homeschool option. And so I see that through strong extracurricular, music, arts, tech ed, better, stronger relationship with the university, maintaining some of those honors programs and AP.
I think, let me speak to, that Eau Claire has a number of innovative programs. So the importance of keeping the core strong and investing in the programs and expanding the programs that we have. We have 3 charter schools in the district. These are public charters: Montessori, McKinley, the middle and high school, and the Eau Claire Virtual School. So these are really distinguishing components of the school district, and something you've been perhaps that have heard about is expansion, particularly like expansion of Montessori. We have schools within schools. North Star Middle School has the Arctic Zone, very popular, bringing students into the school district. So I think thinking about innovative programs, correct, to how do we distinguish ourselves? And you want to be careful about, kind of not jumping on like what's new and shiny, especially at times in a budget crisis, and really keeping the core strong. I want to make a correction to something that was said about honors being done away with and bringing everybody down. That is false. What we have done is to restructure. If you know anything about the research on honors, the privileged students typically are the ones that find themselves in those classes. So what we have done is to bring everybody up and raising academic achievement, so all students experience the same excellence in education.
I think one of the things that we can do at a district giving like, the challenges of retaining teachers, right? Like, for example, this last year, we couldn't hire, a Hmong language teacher to teach Hmong. And so then there was no Hmong language class at the high school levels. We're also facing, challenges in keeping, in the future, keeping our German teacher, right? Because they're gonna retire. And so how do we fill those positions, right? And so those specialized positions that we as a district need to be able to offer our students the best education with the best world view, right? I think we can be more creative about how we keep teachers and how we build a pipeline of teachers that will come to our district and stay with our district, right? So it's enticing scholarships. Can we create a scholarship fund that we can give to peer professional school system who's already passionate and engaged and invested in the district but doesn't have a teacher license? Can we invest in them to get their teaching certificate in those specialist areas, those kind of things? And I really agree too that like we need to focus on what's already special about our district. The Dewey Immersion program is, something that is highly sought after. It's always a waiting list. Often so which my daughter is in, and Moskal is a very good program. And so how do we expand those programs to make it so we have more room for students to be in those spaces, right? Because it's only at Moskal, so then there's really nowhere else that students can access that program.
So I will probably echo Lori's comment about keeping our core strong. I do think that given the budget crisis, it's incredibly important that we make sure that we're continuing to provide the education despite whatever financial troubles the district finds themselves in, because the kids come first. We mentioned a few different programs that the school district has. The Arctic Zone, which I was fortunate enough to be part of my teacher training in. Project-based learning is so cool. Dual immersion, where we have kids from kindergarten. We have native Spanish speakers and native English speakers learning in the same classroom, learning language skills together. That's amazing, not just for like language acquisition, but also for building a really strong community that reaches across barriers that society has placed in front of us. And I do also want to say that I do support a really growing teaching program as well, like Todd mentioned. And it's something the district has explored in the past, getting kids who are excited about education and excited about learning, pointing them in the direction of teaching programs, and then convincing them to come back. So I think partnerships with the university system is incredibly important, as well as university systems from other states. So U of M is probably the first one I'm thinking of, but any other sort of university wants to work with us.
Yeah, I'm going to continue on with some of what was said, but I'm going to take it a little bit of a different twist. It's not really the board's job to do innovative programming. What we can do is encourage the board or encourage the superintendent to think about innovative programming. And we have a lot of innovative programming going on in the schools. The languages, if you want to learn Japanese, you can do that in the district. The course options program is an amazing thing where students can get college credit by going to the technical school or to UW Eau Claire and getting the upper level classes, and then you can transfer those programs into college. FCCLA was hosted at Stout. I can't remember what the acronym actually stands for, but it's a whole professional array of things, including cooking. And my son did FCCLA, and they did a competition that was down in the Dells, and he's now a professional chef. So there are these great innovative programs, and you know what we need to be doing? We need to be telling that story about the things that are going on in our district a whole lot better, because we can attract kids into the district, raising enrollments from some of the innovative programs that I just don't think people know we're offering right now. And we need to tell that story.
Okay, so starting with Lori, how will you make sure that you're hearing from everyone in the community and making sure that you're doing what the community actually wants for public?
Sorry, doing what the public want, or the community wants for.
Sorry, yeah, I stumbled at the end. And trying to just make sure that you're keeping community values in mind and keeping up with what the community wants from the school board.
So what I'm thinking about is how the district engages with the community and how the school board engages with the community. So kind of both currents running through this. The communication is actually one of our top priorities right now. Recognizing that the school board has not always had good communication, has not been active out. So we developed a communication plan, and it involves regular connection with individuals, families, students, key organizations, business leaders, community leaders, where we are going out, neighborhood associations, going out regularly and presenting information about the school district, taking questions, listening sessions, active exchanges, forums, with all the groups that I mentioned. It is actually the communication plan that we are developing right now and getting ready to launch it this year.
I come from a community organizing background, so hearing from community and making sure that community is being heard is very important. And I think it's even more so important on the school board, right? As school board members, we want to hear from parents of students who are struggling. We want to hear from parents who don't come to the children's school because they may not feel comfortable going to the children's school, right? Or they may not have the language ability to talk to the teachers about whatever it is that their student may be facing in school that they can reach out to. And so really making sure that we are listening, right? That we are intentional, right? Because you can say you're listening, but if the intention's not there to really make sure that you are really engaging intentionally in the community that are underrepresented and underserved, then you're just being very performative. And that's something that I do not want our district to do. I think we have a great communication plan that can be improved to make sure that everyone's heard, that we are actively engaging community members from the very beginning when decisions are being made that impact all of our community, right? Like the discussion we had recently with the schools consolidation that we had last year. I think our community needs to be reached out to first. We need to be at the table. We need to be able to be in that room having the discussion, making those plans, and be able to give input because our students are the ones that are going to be at the end of the short stay if we don't hear from our community members.
So I think the biggest way that I'm going to say communication with community members is just by living here. I live a block away from North High School. I go to schools and substitute for teachers who also live in Eau Claire. I go to community events. I hear from people all the time. One thing that I'm going to intentionally do, if we elect it, is to be more proactive in that. I want to hear from more said community groups that are underrepresented in our district and our community, and just work to bring us, I guess, all closer together. I guess. Yeah. Thank you.
No.
Back down.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I just don't want you to talk about it.
Okay. Just being approachable. I think when you're on the school board, you're always on the job, right? So when you're at the track meet doing the vending at the concession stand, and somebody wants to talk some more business or ask a question about things, I mean, you're always there. You're always approachable. You're always kind of engaging the community because you live in the community. And I would take my dog on walks and I'd get halfway down the street and I'd have a neighbor, asking me, what's going on here? And it's just about being in that role of being a school board member and engaging and talking and listening and doing all of those things that people elect you to do.
One of the things I mentioned, I think when you run for a position like this is you have to have the time. I never had the time before, I got the time now to be really focused on this job. And I think just being out in the public as much as possible, I'm completely open to that. One thing I'd like to do is at least every 2 weeks, I'd like to get into one school every 2 weeks. Let the principal know, work out with them that I'm coming and be available over lunch. And be available just to listen to teachers and staff and their concerns and what they have to tell me. And I keep doing that until I finish that for every school. And as a school board member, I can do that, and I should do that. I even think maybe trying to think outside the box and maybe try to see if we could have a event maybe every 2 weeks with local media, whether it be TV, radio, where the school board comes and is open, to the public, maybe get on the 12 o'clock news or the 1 o'clock news and have, a 30-minute session. Why not, make ourselves more available to the public. So I know since I've retired, I've joined the Cleghorn Lyons Club, which is a super active club, and a lot of people are extremely interested in education. And I've been working on a project with Lutheran Social Services to reopen shut down drug and alcohol treatment center. I get a lot of questions about education too, since people know that I'm running. So I think, just being involved in the community, being active, and making yourself available.
Okay, now if one of the schools in the district starts falling behind on a subject such as reading, how do you believe that the school board should reallocate resources or work to help that school catch up with the others in the district?
I think if a program is falling behind in terms of meeting student success and student results, that we ask that particular subject or program to be reassessed, right, on a more regular basis. So on the board, we monitor results on calendar depending on what that may be, right? And so asking to make sure that we see those results, right? And we see if there is a result that's not meeting the standards, that we're able to pick that up and be able to make sure that we can work with our administrators to work with teachers to make sure that they are doing what they need to do to bring up to bring up that student results that it is what we want it to be, right? For example, our last results on our last month report show a gap between special education students with VIP and other students. Obviously, but there will always be, a gap there, but how do we close that gap? And so bringing when we get those results and really making sure that we're, as a board, that we are paying attention to what's not working, right, and working with the superintendent to work with the administrator, because we don't manage the administrators, we just work with the superintendent, and so holding them accountable, right, to what they also need to do with students.
Yeah, so like has been said, we usually have our results policy come before us, and superintendent basically explains, the school district report codes, the school report codes. We look at all of that data, and then we have all these policies set in place on how to correct that. I'm going to be honest with you, my ADHD's kicking in. I actually lost the thread. What was the question again?
The question there is, how could the school board help to further support a school that's falling behind?
Gotcha, of course. Okay, and we talked about the reallocation of funds. So anybody who's lived through No Child Left Behind knows that taking money away from failing schools is not a solution. Instead, we should focus on lifting those students and those teachers up, making sure that we are evaluating the data, making sure that we have data-based solutions we're not just doing this on a whim, so we're actually making sure that we have research and good ideas that back these up.
Yeah, I think that the board has a role in identifying the problem. And I think that then the superintendent and the director of teaching and learning then bring the board things that will mitigate or suggestions, solutions to be able to address. Within that question, there could be a whole number of things that's causing the decline in learning. And we have to rely on our professionals to then kind of dig into that and bring to the board what those potential issues might be. And then it's the board's role to find, reallocate, do the things that the superintendent thinks are necessary to make that school successful.
So Aiden, was the question around just failing in a particular course area, or the school just not doing good across the board?
You can take it either way.
Well, again, I'd have to rely on the principal and the educators at that school to better understand what's going on. Maybe part of what I said earlier is just getting out, to a troubled school and seeing firsthand what's going on, listening, coming in with a humble attitude and just trying to figure out what the problem is. But it's a situation where I think the board has to rely on the professionals in the field closest to the situation and work with the superintendent to try to find some solutions.
So I think I'm gonna be a bit different here and kind of say something bold, and that with the systems that we have in place in the district, we are not going to see a school fall. And so I talked a little bit about how we govern. We have a system that really takes the long view. It's preventative, working across grade levels, proactive rather than reactive. So how do we know that the district is accomplishing? How do we know what's happening in the schools? We know from evidence, and we know from the data and long-term data. So we use a governing model that is best practice. We monitor every aspect of district functioning every year. So student outcomes, top-notch education, we know exactly what's happening in student achievement at all the grade levels, in all the core areas. And since I want to also grab this opportunity to say that since I joined the school board in 2017, that the district has demonstrated substantial growth across all of these areas for all students, particularly among students who might fall behind. And we can think about say closing achievement gaps. These outcomes speak to the efforts and the impact of systemic changes that Eau Claire has made in recent years. And so I feel actually quite confident in saying that it's a scenario we would not experience.
Okay, now moving on to new question. This will be started by Jarrett. How can we better support students who may face issues concerning resource accessibility? For example, a student that is having issues getting access to food, water, housing. How can we better support them?
Well, this is going to be another sort of issue where the board doesn't have a direct role in that. We're not directly in contact with students. But we do have a number of programs throughout the district that support students in that way. I had the opportunity to visit Prairie Ridge what's the week that? The 4K building. They actually have like a whole community pantry in there. So they make sure that kids go home with food. They make sure that kids have jackets for the winter. All of that sort of stuff. This is a really important thing. This is teachers and schools coming together to support their communities, because that's what we do in Eau Claire. So I'm really proud to be part of a district that does those things.
The free and reduced lunch program is a great program and it needs to be supported. extremely high. One of the things that I think can add to supporting students is partnerships with local not-for-profits and organizations such as the Public Schools Foundation. I think that if people in the community understand the needs and that some students really wake up in the morning and have food insecurity. I think that this is a community that will open their wallets and provide to a foundation that would provide assistance to. And that's just one example. There are a lot of great not-for-profits in the area, and it being a community, I think that having those partnerships can really strengthen. Takes a village.
Yeah, you're right, Phil. It does take a village, and I think one club I mentioned that I've joined since I retired was the Pegboard Lions Club, and it's just amazing that this is one of the strongest lion clubs in the state of Wisconsin. What we do, the money we give. We've been working locally with the different parts of the public schools here with different donation requests. I think I'm getting more people who work at Feed My People Food Bank too. I think a big part of this, which has been said, is not directly the school board's responsibility, but there are solutions on how to go about solving that, and community organizations. One thing that I would look to do, this is kind of partially related to it, but I don't even know what we get paid for being on the school board. It's something I know it's very little, but I'm going to plan to offer to take any money that I get after tax, put it in a fund. And I always hear these stories about how teachers are having to spend their own money out of their own pocket. And I'll set up some kind of reimbursement plan where they show me a receipt, once per year per teacher. I'll open myself up to try to help them out so they're not paying out of their own pocket. I don't know, if anybody tells me I can't do that, I'll find a way to do it, so.
I hate to break the rules. Could I get 5 more seconds at the end of this? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll yield. I'll give my time.
Appreciate it, thank you.
I'll speak a little bit more broadly, food insecurity, but, kind of more holistically about mental health and behavioral health. I can say with confidence that the district, student health and safety have been a significant focus, have been and continue to be a significant focus for the school district. If you look at our school board policies, review those policies, we ensure students' mental health, their physical health at all grade levels, promoting physical activity, proper exercise, nutrition, sleep, environments that are free from bullying, thinking about children experiencing food insecurity, discrimination, bias, other forms of intimidation. We collaborate, as has been said, schools can't do it alone. We collaborate with a lot of community partners and offering services like early childhood education, mental health, family support services and systems, youth organizations, all other services whatever services that children and families need to flourish. We invest in guidance counselors who focus on students' emotional needs, school nurses, social workers, school psychologists, and knowledgeable and caring staff members to be curricular and co-curricular. So again, I'm going to be bold and to say that the systems are in place. We are proactive and we are preventative, and that we address problems for kids holistically.
In terms of food insecurity, I think as a district and as a board, we can enact some policy or find some money to make sure that we can feed our kids breakfast for free. I think breakfast is a really important meal for students. It really kickstart their learning. It really kickstart their social emotional connections with their peers, like having breakfast together. And so I think as a board member, that would be something that I will really be pushing for, and be advocating for, is how to be as a district, given all the challenges that we are experiencing also be able to offer free breakfast for our kids, right? And then like Lori said, there's only a lot of measures that the district is doing to make sure that families are connected to local nonprofits and local resources. The district have a pantry at the district office, right, that schools can access and be able to take coats and jackets and things that folks need. We have a community liaison that works with families who helps families secure other resources that the district may not have, right? Like currently, providing mutual aid to families who are impacted by the recent ice activity in our area, right? And making sure families have the food that they need and the resources that they need during times like this.
Okay, so I know that Jarrett requested a chance to make one extra comment. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna open it up to you four. Are you guys okay with time for an extra comment? If he gets time for an extra comment, then anyone who would like one gets a chance. Seems like there's no.
Thank you guys so much, I appreciate it. This is less about me and actually just something I'm really excited about. The Oakland Area School District is part of a professional organization called WASB, the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. So they have a lobbying on it, basically. They have professionals who go out and work with legislators and try to get things passed. Our board voted to support universal free school lunches throughout the state, basically saying that that's something that we think would be a good idea. We've sent that to WASB and they've adopted this vote of their what's the legislative priorities. So basically they're going to be shaking down our legislators saying we should feed our kids, which I think we could all probably agree on. So if you want to help feed our kids, please contact our representatives and tell them to do something about that. So thank you. So thank you again.
Did anyone else want a chance to get final words in about that? Perfect. Now, given that we have the time, everyone's going to be given a that is gonna do it for all of our questions from the audience. I'm sorry if we couldn't get to yours. If you get the opportunity, feel free to ask your questions later. Now I'm gonna give everyone here a chance to give a 2-minute closing statement for themselves. Why you should open whatever they want to say. We can start with whoever has the mic.
So I'm running for school board because I really care about community, right? And I want to be able to build something for our students that involves all of us in community. And I think when, as parents, as community members, we'll be around the table making decisions, and we are making decisions that are best for our students. And I want to be able to offer that to not just people that's on the board, not just, folks who are engaged in their students' education, but to everyone that is invested, right, to all of the parents of students who often do not have a way to be engaged or have no time to be engaged. And as a mom, I want strong schools for my kids. So selflessly, I'm on the board for that, right? But I know that by also uplifting my selfish values, that I'm also doing that for everybody else, right? And so in that way, I'm committed to making sure all students are that all students have what they need to be able to thrive in the school district, to be able to become well-rounded, contributing adults in our community, and and then we have access to everything that they need to be able to do that.
All right, so I'll just say it again. First and foremost is the kids. I think each child is all of our children. And I think that we all need to work together to support them and make sure that they all have whatever they need and that they feel safe and welcome in our communities. Regardless of their skin color, regardless of who they love, every child is our child and they belong here. So if we're elected, I'm going to continue to push for that, and I'm sure that all of the other candidates will as well. And like I said, I think what I bring to the table is a uniqueness in that I'm actually living the realities of our current budget crisis. And like I said, service has been a through line through my whole life. I'm an Army veteran. I used to be a fictional care worker for people with severe disabilities. I I adopt dogs. I'm a nice guy, I think. But beyond that, I'm going to put kids first. I'm going to make sure that we do everything we can to support.
So I'm a retired guy now, and when I look back on the things that I did before I retired, it's about 35 years in higher education. The last 10 years were as a vice chancellor with finance and facilities and student services and police that were all reporting to me. You know, I think I bring a different perspective to the board. And that's because I was allocating resources across a very large institution. That's why I'm also very focused in on the enrollments within the district. I think that if we really start to tell our story, I think if we start to find out why students are leaving, I think if we try to retain people and we build up those enrollments, some of the financial issues will just come in line. And I told that story to some of the teachers, and it was the Teachers Association, and that resonated with them, which I would thank them for, you know, the endorsement that they gave me. I've had a lot of people that asked me to run, which is why I'm standing here today. I spent 3 years off the board. I did a few things. And there were enough people that said, would you throw your hat in the ring again? That I finally said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So, you know, I appreciate the vote. And you know, the most important thing is to vote. Thanks.
Amen. When I go around and meet with people door to door, my mantra is kind of common sense leadership for their students, teachers, and taxpayers. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we're providing resources for a great frontline education. I want our district to be known for a district that is just solid on the fundamentals, the science, the math, the critical thinking, the American history, the world history, arts, you know, you name it. I want us to be solid. I guess we look upon as one of the best districts in the state. That's a long-term project, right? Always keep working towards that. Teachers will know that I want to contribute to a culture where teachers know that they're valued, they're listened to, and they're respected. Whenever you work in a district like that or a company like that, man, I mean, you want to give 110%, you know? And we got to think about our taxpayers too. This is a community that doesn't have really any major Fortune 500 company. Every one of us is being pulled, you name it, right? You know, insurance, food, medical care. We're all being hammered by the cost of living. And we can't just assume that we can go to the public and always get a referendum, even though this community has supported very well. So when we have to do that again, we have to be able to show our taxpayers, only roughly about maybe 25% of people in this town have kids in school. We can't ignore the other 75% that don't have kids in school. We have to show them what we've done to try to control costs, what that means dollar-wise. We have to show them as well very clearly and communicate very clearly what's going to happen if a referendum doesn't pass. So we got to think about everybody, students, teachers, taxpayers. It's a balancing act when you're on the board.
And thanks to everybody in attendance tonight, taking time out of a busy week to spend it with us. Thank you to the other candidates for sharing this experience. Huge thanks, cannot thank Student Senate enough, Aiden and others in the commission for hosting the event. And I want to speak to everyone here, but especially to the student senators. I believe that each citizen should consider service to their districts, school board, city council, county board, or other public entity. And we have student senators who are already doing that, and other students in the room. And given the current trends at the state and federal levels that impact education, There's never been a more urgent need for citizens to serve. And so I just simply stated, the time for me to offer service is now. So my commitment as a board member, it is, and it will always be to ensure that each child who attends public schools in our district, has access to education that is inclusive, it's rigorous, and of highest quality, and that all district employees have what they need to flourish. As Phil said, the most important thing is to vote. And I ask for your ongoing support for our district and also for your vote on April 7th. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank all of you for coming out. You guys, thanks for coming here, having this conversation with all of us. And thank you guys for coming here. An informed vote is a powerful one. Do you have anything else to say? No? Well, yeah, thank you guys for coming out. Have a beautiful rest of your